JXN Cloud. I'm Jamin.
I'm Casey.
And I'm Olivia.
And we're in Revelation 12:7. So in our last episode, we met a woman and a dragon. The woman's trying to give birth to a baby, and the dragon's trying to eat it up, right?
Yes.
People have likened this to Mary and Jesus. People have likened this to Israel being liberated from Egypt. People have likened this to Israel giving birth to the Messiah. People have likened this to the church coming in different, like it goes a bunch of different routes. In our last episode, the route that we kind of went was John, who was assigned to take care of Mary and wrote the book of Revelation. Maybe Mary was reporting the different things in the sky that the wise men saw and telling it to John, and then John writes it down in Revelation as theological and spiritual and earthly, but also heavenly look at Jesus' birth and resurrection. That was all Revelation 12, 1 through 6. The reason I bring it all back up is because the story doesn't end there. The dragon at one point struck down a third of the stars of heaven, and that's where our story continues. Now, war arose in heaven. Michael and his angels fighting against the dragon. All right, Michael's one of our only named archangels or any angel of the whole Bible, right? Wars in heaven, Michael and his angels fighting against the dragon. And the dragon and his angels fought back, but he was defeated. There was no longer any place for them in heaven. And the great dragon was thrown down, that ancient serpent who is called the devil and Satan, the deceiver of the whole world. He was thrown down to earth, and his angels were thrown down with him. I'm going to pause right there. People sometimes, occasionally, will fight about the snake in the garden not being Satan. It was just some other sad angel. And you could go that route, I guess, if you really wanted to, but I would suggest that right here, John's being explicit. Because there is no primary Satan in the Old Testament. That name as a name shows up in the New Testament. There are Satan-like angels in the Old Testament, but no one who is like given the name like this is Satan, right? So right here you see John like, you know that serpent, the one that messed us up, the original offender, the one that sent humanity spiraling and did all those wrong things. Well, that dragon I've been talking about that's been persecuting the church and holy people, that was the ancient serpent, the one in the garden. That was Satan, that was the devil. He just takes all the names and like primarily assigns it all to the original offender of Satan. And it's not just Satan being the one who messed everything, he might have messed everything up, but we catch a glimpse in this story that Satan had actually won over some other angels too. A third of them is what we saw in the last part of Revelation. The dragon swept down a third of the stars. Stars are what in Revelation?
Angels.
Spiritual beings.
Yep, usually. And so in this case, it's now being told that Satan, the devil, the dragon, the deceiver of the whole world, is thrown down to earth, and his angels with him, which would be the third of the stars, right?
But like in this story, it's coming after the birth of the child.
Yeah.
Like,
What do you do with that?
that seems like a weird place to put that when that doesn't.
Well, like you said, in the Old Testament, there are angels that are Satans, but we don't have like the Satan until the New Testament.
Yeah, well, I mean, we don't know of that being the Satan until the New Testament. And then we put together in retrospect all the moments in the Old Testament that were the Satan, right?
Okay.
But he's existed before the New Testament.
Okay.
So, okay, so in the Old Testament, Satan just means accuser or adversary.
Right.
That means good people can be Satans because a good person in a court case might be an adversary to a bad person in a court case, right? So that's in Hebrew, Satan is Satan. Then you get to the book of Job, and in the book of Job, there's an angel that is a Satan to Job and just wants to see Job's life destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so like that's just an angel. That's not necessarily the Satan, but it's an adversary to humanity. It's a accuser of Job, right? I know Job's got it all together, but I bet if you mess with him, I bet he'd turn on you. He's accusing Job. He's slandering Job before God.
Yeah.
I'm guessing where the name Satan gets attributed to the actual Satan by the time we like assign that name right to the serpent in the New Testament. That's probably because one, they look at the Satan of Job and they're like, the original bad guy, that's what he's like. He thinks we're crap. And so let's take that name that title that was used for that particular angel and just make that the name of the bad guy. But they're also in Babylon for a long time. Like there's the Old Testament and then a long period of time and then the New Testament. So their theology during that time probably is where like the Satan ideology grew out during that moment in the middle. So by the time we get to the New Testament, now this Satan guy who wasn't around very much in the Old Testament pops up all over the place. It's because during that middle period, that's where they started establishing this like, oh, we see this being all throughout the Old Testament. What's a name we should give him? How about that Job angel? He's like that. Okay, Satan. We all track with that, or is that confusing?
That's fine.
Tracking.
Old Testament blurry, Middle Times probably constructed, New Testament said matter-of-factly because we're missing the middle part where it was constructed.
Okay.
Okay, but here we have that Satan, and he takes a bunch of angels with him. So in heaven, we've got an attempt to like, what's he doing? Why is he trying to fight God? Like, what's going on here? You got any theories?
He's having a coup d'etat.
Yeah, I mean, coup, right? Is that what
Yes.
you said? Yeah, so Satan,
Sorry, I said it's more French pronunciation.
Satan's trying to take the throne, in other words.
Yeah.
Is that what you're going for? Okay. So that fits the Old Testament because within all those glimpses of that Satan-like being, there's the Isaiah and Ezekiel passage. And I think it's one of those two where God is the brightest star in the sky in a prophecy, and then this lesser star tries to usurp him. And that would be the Satan passage. And because Satan tries to usurp the brightest star in the sky, God himself, if you remember the phrase, he falls from heaven, or as Jesus says, fell like lightning.
Mm-hmm.
The idea is like Satan was kicked out of heaven for trying to take God's place.
Okay.
But God not only kicked Satan out, Satan did what humans do all the time when there's a coup. You don't just one person try to overthrow another person, like you're gonna lose, right? You need to build repertoire. Churches get split over this, where another pastor comes along and is like, I want the big position, so I'm gonna take some of the congregation, get them on my side, and then before they know it, we're just gonna launch an attack and try to kick the bigger position out, and we're all gonna take it. Now I'm gonna be in charge. Look, if it didn't work for Satan, it won't work for you. So don't do that. That doesn't belong in the church. That belongs in hell. Okay.
But that's how we get like 35 churches within a 2-mile radius.
Because they all split.
Yep.
And guess
I mean-
what they do? They continue to split because they've harnessed themselves.
Listen, it's just cell division
It's
for
not-
for
no,
it's
no.
cancer.
Cell division is supposed to be a healthy thing, right?
Right, unless it splits uncontrollably, and that's what's called cancer.
Okay, so cell division as it should. Don't take me down another analogy. Cell division as it should in the church is be fruitful and multiply. Cancerous church division is
split until you're too small to survive.
Sure. I don't know if this analogy works out or not. Anyways, don't be Satan. Okay, so he's turned a bunch of angels, a third of the angels, against God. Job actually said that God doesn't trust his angels. Like here's a good reason why. A third? Like how many more angels since then have left as well? Like
a quarter.
You need to write your own revelation, do you? Yeah, I mean, how many angels have left since then? Have angels continued to watch humanity and still kind of felt like the Satan of Job, where like, you died for them and they still do this? You know, like, you've seen the way that they think about their politics and the way that they treat all of the poor among them. Like, you went down there, you died for them, and they're still doing the same things, but now they do it in your name again in new ways. Like, I'm out, you know? Like, I don't know if any angels are still bitter in like our last 2,000 years have slimmed down even more.
So I have theories, but most of them are all supernatural theories.
But that's just a supernatural theory. Which is that TV show you watch that she says is blasphemous and you probably shouldn't quote?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, you should stop bringing that up every episode.
So only when you go into the murking details that you don't know, and they made it.
My point was just simply, like, look at humanity. Like, look at our generation. When people look at the church, it makes them want to give up on the church. A lot of times. I wonder if there are some bitter angels in heaven that feel the same way still. And
do you think angels have generations? Is there like a boomer angel generation?
That's
Or
not
is there
what I
like
was saying at all. I'm just saying angels apparently can turn on God. Job, the way that Job lived was an example to the angels not to turn on humanity, right? That was the court case. All humans are the same. I bet if you just took everything away from this one, he would curse you just like any other human. God's like, oh yeah? Watch. And he doesn't. And so that's like God's example. Like Job was an example to angels that humans are worth it. Which means angels
Don't believe in us.
That one didn't, right?
Yeah.
That was its whole thing. I was walking to and fro throughout the earth. All humans suck. I watched them in every corner, right?
I mean, technically, that is the conclusion that Supernatural says is what happens for angels. I'm just saying.
Stop quoting Supernatural. My point is, a third of the angels turned against God back then. Some might have felt Joby over the last 2,000 years. Jovial, I don't know.
Jovial or jovial?
They felt jovial.
Jovial. Okay.
So Satan's troops have increased. We don't know until we're finally taken behind the curtain to see what's left and all that. But yeah, Satan's kicked out of heaven. Third of his angels thrown down with him. You said this was after.
Well, in the story that
it's after the resurrection, right? In the last story, Jesus was called up to the throne, and now this happened.
Okay.
So, Olivia, you got any thoughts? Before, after, during? Was Jesus born?
I don't know, man.
Was
I
Jesus?
don't know. It's all wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey.
In Revelation, that is accurate, yes. So, we could go the route of saying, like, Jesus was born, and then Satan rose up the coup, right? Because his tail swept down a third of the stars of heaven, cast them to the earth, and then the dragon stood before the woman who was about to give birth.
So you think maybe the Satan waited until Jesus was in the womb because he thought that Jesus and God would be vulnerable at that point and chose that moment to stand up.
Sounds like a good theory.
You could maybe go that route, but we don't fully know what Satan knew about Jesus entirely. They knew he was the Son of God, right? Did they know that he was God himself?
Well, I would think that the angels in heaven understand the Trinity a lot better
Than we do,
can.
since they can
Maybe.
potentially
And
go into his
that, you know,
presence.
they like live with the Trinity.
Sure. Maybe.
So,
yeah.
and you know, I feel like the angels in heaven also knew that God had a plan to save humanity, and maybe Satan was just up there plotting, waiting for the right time.
Maybe, except if Satan knew what the plan was, he wouldn't have killed Jesus on the cross. And
Well, yeah,
that's Paul's point, is like, if
That's
the
fair.
principalities and powers of this world knew what they were doing, they would have never murdered Jesus. So you could go the route of what you just said, like they noticed
That he was
maybe God is somehow weak in this time, you know, because
well, I'm
they
not
can't
saying
win.
they noticed, but maybe they thought.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Maybe they noticed that Jesus had come to earth, and they're like, maybe
There's
now.
only two of the Trinity. Let's attack now.
maybe, but then they still wouldn't have known enough about what was going on, because they don't even know when Jesus is coming back. Jesus said even the angels don't know, even only God himself.
Well, it's not like they mind meld with.
Well, that's what I mean.
but
They don't know everything that God knows.
Right.
And they clearly didn't know, they probably didn't know that Jesus was supposed to die if Satan wasn't aware of that. That was supposed to make sense in retrospect, right? Which is why even Jesus himself comes to the disciples on the walk to Emmaus. He's like, okay, let me explain using the law and the prophets what's happened, because you guys don't get it, right? And that's why prophecies throughout the Bible are cryptic sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
It's because if Satan knew what was going to happen, he would have never fell into the plan through what he did. So sure, we could go the route that
That what?
That meld.
I was going to say Melkor, which is the Satan of Lord of the Rings.
How dare you?
We could go into the idea that Satan chose this time, and that John is being chronological about the attack then. But we could also easily just go the route that Revelation is not chronological.
Really wobbly timey-wimey.
And yeah, and part of the reason I would do that, I'd be more apt to go that route. I think there's some scholars I trust that are like, wait, when did this happen? The reason I'd go the other route is because Ezekiel, Isaiah already talked about like Satan being kicked down to the earth. And it's confusing to perceive that Satan messed everything up in the garden and then was allowed to just like chill out in heaven still.
So
Whereas the whole point seems to be that he's Lord of the underworld, so he was kicked out for doing that thing. So, before you make your joke, that isn't going to be funny. My point is, I wouldn't pin this on that moment, unless Satan somehow like broke into heaven and grabbed the angels to fight. I don't know if he can do that. I don't know. Maybe the war happened later.
I have another idea that's slightly depressing but funny.
Uh-huh.
What if this was just John trying to start some like science fiction writing, and it got swept in with the rest of his writings and became part of the Bible as
Heresy.
First off, I've done that. In my book, The Rise of the Water Kingdom, my whole point was to like try to retell the gospel, but do it in a fantasy kind of way. And I kind of learned that from John, because he's telling the gospel right now throughout Revelation, but in a fantasy kind of way. That's what we call...
Okay, but the difference is that he's saying Revelation is being told as fantasy, and you're saying that John wrote a fantasy novel that got wrapped into Revelation. There's a big difference between the two sentences you guys just said.
Correct. John didn't have sci-fi, I don't think, so there's also that.
I mean...
Apocalypse was probably pretty close to that feeling, but needless to say, I would I would not pay too much attention to the chronology here. I think that it makes sense to me that the war happened a long time ago. I think the most I could maybe be convinced was like Satan was kicked out a long time ago, but the war happened later, if you want. But I don't know how he pulled that off exactly. But
Or what if this is a second set of angels falling?
what was the first set then?
It happened previously. They didn't tell that part.
He's saying like the war between Satan and God, where Satan tries to usurp God, happened prior to this, but this is like a round 2.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, you could maybe go that route. You then just need to figure out how did Satan turn these
Another
angels.
third of angels.
Like, can he still travel to heaven or what? Because it seems like he was sent to the earth a long time ago as like a binding punishment.
I don't know. I don't know what the banishment principles are of heaven.
If only we knew more about the rules of ancient cosmology and the spiritual world. Either way, yeah, I just put this all in the past, but I think you could say that like the angels still might turn over time because they clearly have done it before, so they can clearly do it again. Just like humans have free will, they have free will. Okay, let's finish the passage. Angels were thrown down with them. I heard a loud voice in heaven saying, now the salvation and the power and the kingdom of our God and the authority of his Christ have come. For the accuser of our brothers has been thrown down, who accuses them day and night before our God. Now we mess with the chronology again, right? Because it says, now the salvation of the power of the kingdom of God and the authority of Christ have come. So that seems to imply that Satan was tossed down like after the resurrection. But again, let's not get caught up in chronology. I don't know. And they conquered him by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony, for they loved not their lives even unto death. Let me read that verse again. They have conquered him by the blood of the Lamb, death, by the word of their testimony, the thing you give before you die, and they love their lives even unto death. How did they conquer?
Death.
They conquered.
They conquered death by dying?
Yeah. They
Well, yeah,
conquered
that's
through
how
their
Jesus
death.
conquered death.
Exactly. And this is such a huge part. I mean, there's a sweet, awesome anime music video of Revelation that came out to a Crowder song.
Wait, what?
Yeah. There's a Crowder anime music video of Revelation. And it's like Jesus fighting Satan while he's in Sheol. And it's epic. And then like Jesus goes back to Earth. Maybe I'm remembering it wrong, but I swear all the Christians just take up guns and tanks and start, and I'm like, what the frick? You know, like, how do we just go from this, like, epic Jesus versus Satan, like, anime battle, taking the keys of death, to now, like, all right, Christians, let's go out and destroy everything. Like,
Yes, now that we have the keys of death,
yes,
let's use them on everyone.
the Christians conquer by dying. In other words, what appears like you've been conquered is actually a conquering of the people trying to conquer you.
Kind of like those who are last come first sort
Yes.
of thing.
It's the cross. It's like Olivia said, it's the cross. And you got to remember, I think I said this before, the reason I started reading Revelation is because Jesus led me to very pacifistic thinking, and I didn't understand how Revelation could sync up with pacifistic thinking. This is all over Revelation. Blood, a lot of the times, is related to the martyrs. And in this particular case, as the word conquering has shown up many times, when Christians conquer, it's not because they took up tanks and guns, Crowder. It's because they died, like the blood of the Lamb did. And that is how you win. It's not very American. It's not very political. A lot of people don't buy into kingdom teaching like this. But that is Revelation through and through. Surprise! I'm not just taking one passage and saying that. I've shown you over and over again throughout the last 10 chapters where this is the theme. So, therefore, rejoice, O heavens, you who dwell in them, because Satan's been kicked out, and all of these fallen angels. But woe to you, O earth and sea,
We're not done yet, guys.
for the
Walk
devil
away.
has come down to you in great wrath, because he knows his time is short. In other words, heaven's great. Satan and his rebellion's gone. We sent them to earth, by the way. Sorry. Oh, and Satan at least knows enough prophecy to know he's going to die in a lake of fire. So he really hates Christians because we're going to go on to be immortal and take his spot.
Honestly, it's kind of like the perfect punishment for Satan, though, because he rose up because he hated people. So what's his punishment? Being stuck on earth with people.
In your face. Yeah, no, I mean, even when I'm casting out demons, like they're...
And who does he hate the most? The people that prove him wrong.
When I've casted out demons before, like there's often times where like if I just do this, like they're freaking out. Like, don't touch me, that hurts so much. Like the image of God restored by Jesus is not pleasant to Satan and his kingdom. Even just our very touch can literally, they'll writhe in pain. So that being said, Revelation is a strange book, but also a very beautiful one. And today you get the sci-fi fantasy feel. It's great. Heaven has been liberated from evil. Less great down here because he's kicked out of the highest of heights to the lowest of lows. And the lowest of lows is still below us, but we're close enough to that place that we often butt heads with it. So, with that being said,
Be sure to like, comment, subscribe down below.
And that's just a theory.
You can't say that.
A revelation theory. See, I changed it.
Yeah, but it's still too close. We're going to get in trouble.
We are going to get in trouble for that one.